I'm Fallon, 33, middle child between two sisters who never learned how to hear the word no. Leona is 35, sharp, loud, always the center of every room. Tessa is 29, unpredictable, always has some drama happening and expects the rest of us to catch her when she falls. Growing up in a quiet suburban part of the Midwest, I learned early how to disappear into the background and make things easier for everyone else. I never minded being the one who stayed calm, stayed dependable, until I realized what it was costing me. Our parents meant well, I'll give them that. But they always seemed to miss how uneven things really were. Leona was the go-getter. She moved out at 20 and started her own marketing firm by 25. Tessa? She was the baby. She stayed home the longest, drifted through part-time jobs and situationships, and always had some new meltdown or request. I went to school, worked part-time, contributed to bills, and kept my head down. No complaints. That was the job I was assigned, keep the peace, smooth things over, don't make noise. When I graduated and became a paralegal, nobody made a big deal of it. My mom gave a short hug, Dad said that's nice, and we moved on. But when Leona got promoted at her agency, there was champagne, a dinner at a steakhouse, and a toast about how she was building her empire. Same thing happened when Tessa moved out of the house for real this time. They helped her load up a U-Haul, like she was heading off to college. I helped too. Of course I did. I paid part of Tessa's rent when her boyfriend left her out of nowhere. She cried on my couch for a week, left tissues everywhere, and walked out without so much as a thank you. When Leona got married in the Bahamas, I was the one helping book flights, emailing back and forth with the hotel staff, printing schedules. I even made a binder. It wasn't my wedding, but again, I helped. That's what I did. That's what they expected. Last Thanksgiving is when things finally cracked. We were cleaning up after dinner at our parents' place when Mom casually said that I'd be watching Leona's twins that weekend. Apparently, Leona had a spa trip booked with her friends, and they'd already figured I'd be free. No one asked. It wasn't presented like a favor. It was treated like a given. The way you might say, the mail comes at noon. They didn't even pause to see if I responded. Tessa was already putting leftovers into plastic containers. Leona was scrolling through her phone. My mom looked at me like, "You'll be fine, right?" And then moved on to talking about pie. I stood there with a plate in my hand and realized I'd canceled a trip I had planned that same weekend. I was supposed to be out of town with someone I'd started seeing. He was the first guy in a long time who seemed interested in me, not just in what I could do for him. When I told him I had to reschedule, he backed off completely. A few days later, he stopped texting. When I asked why, he said I seemed like someone who was always available for everyone but herself. He wasn't wrong. That night, I sat down with a notebook and went back through my calendar. I counted 16 weekends that year where I'd been roped into something for one or both of my sisters. Watching the twins, feeding Leona's cat, helping Tessa paint, picking someone up from the airport, running out to get last-minute decorations, even baking cupcakes for a baby shower that wasn't mine to organize. Every time it was me. Every time it was assumed. When I told Leona I couldn't help once, just once, she rolled her eyes and said, "You don't have kids. You have time." When I said no to Tessa, she joked that I liked helping. Maybe I did. Maybe I did for longer than I should have, but helping isn't the same thing as being used. So I made a decision. Quietly. No speeches. No drama. I just stopped saying yes. If someone asked, I checked my own schedule. If it didn't work for me, I said no. No excuse. No apology. Just no. I didn't tell anyone I was changing things. I didn't ask them to notice. But I did watch what happened when the answer wasn't automatic anymore. The world didn't collapse. But a few people started to trip. And for the first time, I didn't rush to catch them. The first test came a week after Thanksgiving. Leona sent a text late Thursday asking if I could take the twins that weekend. She was heading out of town, something about a spa package she'd already paid for and how she'd assumed I'd be free, as usual. I replied with 5 words, "Sorry, I've already got plans." Nothing else. 10 minutes later, my phone rang, straight to voicemail. Then another text. She was surprised I hadn't mentioned I was busy. There was a tone to it, like I'd broken a rule no one wrote down. I didn't explain myself. I didn't offer to help find someone else. I just repeated that I had plans and left it there. That night, Tessa texted too. Just a casual check-in, except it wasn't. She asked if everything was okay with me, if something had happened. I knew she was fishing. They were both used to me dropping everything. Now that I wasn't, it felt like a glitch. Around dinner time, my mom called. She asked if I could just help this one time. I told her it wasn't one time. It was a pattern. She didn't have anything to say after that. We both sat in silence before she said, "Okay," and hung up. The group chat we used, mostly filled with Leona's updates, Tessa's memes, and my attempts to keep things civil, went quiet. No one said anything the next day, or the day after. It stayed empty. That weekend, I stuck to my own schedule. I went out with coworkers on Friday, caught a movie with a neighbor Saturday night, and took myself out for brunch Sunday. I didn't check in. I didn't ask how Leona managed. I didn't post anything. I just lived my weekend. Tessa, on the other hand, made sure to be seen. She posted a story holding the twins, complete with a smiling selfie and the caption, "Some of us still know how to be there for family." No names. Just bait. I didn't react. No likes. No response. I wasn't playing that game anymore. The next week, Tessa asked if I could help her pack up her apartment. She was moving across town and had boxes everywhere. I said no. No excuse, no fake conflict. Just no. She didn't reply. A few days later, Leona needed her dry cleaning picked up before a dinner with some clients. Same routine. Sent the message, expected compliance. I said I wasn't available. Again, no explanation. The next message from her wasn't a request. It was a statement about how keeping score wasn't healthy in families, and how she hoped I wasn't letting resentment build. I answered with one line, then stopped keeping track. My dad called that evening. He didn't mention the others, but just asked how I was doing. After a pause, he said I should try not to grow cold. I told him I wasn't cold. I was clear. The change wasn't loud. I didn't scream. I didn't block numbers or cut anyone off. but it was obvious something had shifted. They weren't used to checking first. They were used to announcing what they needed and watching me step in. Now that I wasn't, they didn't know what to do. Every interaction started to feel like they were waiting for me to crack. When I didn't, it threw them off more than any argument would have. They tried other tactics. Tessa texted a meme one afternoon, like nothing had happened. I didn't reply. Leanna sent a photo of the twins in matching pajamas. I double-tapped it, but didn't follow up. I knew what they were doing. They wanted me back in the old role, the helper, the safety net, the one who fixed things, stayed quiet, and didn't ask for anything. That version of me had retired. Even my mom hesitated before asking for anything now. She called about a recipe and paused halfway through to ask if she was interrupting anything. That was new and telling. I didn't push anyone away. I didn't make a big statement. I just stopped being the easiest option. They tested the new boundary in small ways at first, waiting to see if I'd fold, if a cold shoulder or guilt trip would pull me back into line. But I stayed consistent. Every time I didn't volunteer, didn't apologize, didn't rush to fix, the message got clearer. They were dealing with a version of me they hadn't met before. And whether they liked her or not didn't really matter anymore. I'd spent years showing up. Now it was their turn to figure out what that meant without me. Leona sent out a group invite for a family dinner the following Saturday. No context, just a time and address. I responded with a simple yes. What I didn't do was offer to help with setup, groceries, or cooking like I always had in the past. No follow-up messages. No what can I bring? Nothing. Saturday morning, Leona texted asking if I could come early to help her prep the sides. She mentioned how things were already running behind and how I always have a good system. I replied with, I'll be there at 6. No emojis. No wiggle room. I showed up at 6 on the dot. No apron. No sleeves rolled up. No list of things I'd brought to make her life easier. I wore a simple dark green dress, boots, and brought a bottle of red wine. Not for cooking, not to share with the table, just one I liked and planned to pour for myself. Leona opened the door and blinked twice before stepping aside. Tessa was already there, in leggings and a hoodie, stirring something on the stove. Mom was setting the table. Dad was in the living room with the twins. I went straight to the dining area, handed over the wine, and sat down like a guest. The whole night had a strange energy. No one argued. No one raised their voice. But there was a stiffness that hadn't been there before. Usually I'd be checking on the roast or pulling out serving spoons. This time I didn't move. I didn't ask if anything needed doing. I just ate what was handed to me and kept my plate clean. Tessa threw the first jab. Halfway through dinner, she made a joke about how I'd changed. Something about how maybe I'd won the lottery, or maybe I'd just stopped caring. Her fork scraped the plate when she said it. I smiled and said I'd finally figured out peace of mind was free. It just stopped being available when everyone else expected a discount. That quieted the table. Mom asked if I was okay. I looked her in the eye and said I was just busy with my own life these days. She nodded, but her lips stayed tight. Once dessert was cleared, Leona stood and looked toward the kitchen like she expected me to follow. I thanked her for dinner, grabbed my coat, and told everyone I had to get up early the next morning. No extra hands, no extra time. I let myself out. The next day, Tessa sent a text that just said, "Was that really necessary?" I left it on read. I didn't owe a breakdown. 3 days later, Leona texted asking to meet for coffee. She picked a spot halfway between our places and offered to cover the bill. I agreed, not because I wanted to talk, but because I was curious. She arrived with her hair done and sunglasses on her head, like she was coming from a real estate showing. She didn't order anything. I got my usual and sat down. She started with small talk, weather, work, the twins. Then she asked if everything was okay. She said I wasn't acting like myself. I told her she was right. That old version of me, the one who showed up no matter what, who said yes before the question was finished, wasn't around anymore. She leaned forward, said the family dynamic felt off lately. She mentioned how things felt tense, how she missed when we just clicked. I told her that click only worked because I twisted myself to fit around everyone else. She blinked a few times, then warned me that I might regret this distance. That pushing people away usually came back around. I told her I didn't regret anything, especially not if those people only valued me for what I could do, not for who I was. Her tone shifted. She asked what I wanted from her. I said I didn't want anything. I just wanted relationships that were mutual, not transactional. She leaned back, crossed her arms. It was clear she didn't like the new terms. I ended it there. Told her if she wanted a relationship that was real, one based on respect and not assumption, I was open to it. If not, then there wasn't anything left to fix. I paid for my own drink, stood up, and left. No parting hug. No dramatic goodbye. I just walked out the same way I came in, on my own time. By the time I got home, there were no follow-up texts, no angry messages, just silence. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This time, it felt like the terms had been laid out. And for once, I hadn't been the one bending to keep things easy. Evelyn turned 40 and threw a dinner at a cozy little restaurant downtown. It was a tight guest list, just family and a few close friends. I showed up solo, right on time, wearing black slacks, a simple top, and my hair pulled back. Leona and Tessa were already there, standing near the bar with drinks in hand, whispering back and forth while glancing at me the second I walked in. Instead of joining them, I headed to Evelyn's table and took the open seat next to her husband. He pulled out the chair and we got into a real conversation, travel, work, their kids, random stories. I wasn't standing, fetching napkins, or refilling drinks, just sitting and talking like any other guest. Leona tried to slide herself into the center of attention with a story about her recent business trip to New York. She got a few sentences in before I redirected, asking Evelyn about the vacation she'd mentioned earlier in the night. It wasn't aggressive, just a clear pivot. The attention shifted back, and the conversation followed. Later, Tessa tossed a comment across the table, something about me taking a break from servitude. I smiled and replied I just stopped doing unpaid labor. Her expression tightened. Nobody else jumped in. After dessert, people started clearing plates. I stood, thanked Evelyn, hugged her, and left. I didn't look toward the kitchen. I didn't ask if anything needed to be done. I walked out without delay. No one stopped me, but the lack of words said everything. A day later, I got a text from Vanessa, a friend we shared through family circles. She asked if I was okay, mentioned she'd heard I'd been acting distant lately. I told her I wasn't distant, I was just no longer available by default. Essa messaged me midweek. She just moved into a new apartment and wanted help painting. I replied that I already had plans. No long excuse, no story. She replied with a sarcastic, "Wow, you're booked now?" I didn't answer. Instead, I sent her the contact for a painter I'd used recently and left it there. The following weekend, I noticed something was off. My parents hosted a small dinner. Usually I'd be looped in days in advance. This time there was no word. I didn't ask about it. I made my own plans. Explored a new trail an hour out of town, then spent the rest of the day at a cafe with a book and no phone buzz. Leona later sent a photo from the dinner. Everyone seated, smiling, food on the table. The caption said, "Just like the good old days." I saw it, left it on read, and moved on. The next morning, Evelyn texted me. She said it was nice to finally see me relaxed and fully present. That message mattered more than anything my sisters had posted or said in months. There wasn't a big blow-up. No dramatic speech, just choices. Small ones made over and over. I stopped showing up automatically. I stopped answering calls like they were alarms. I started putting space between my time and their expectations. I wasn't cutting anyone out. I was just showing up differently on purpose, on my terms. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to explain that to anyone. Every spring, we rented the same lake house 2 hours north. It started when we were kids, and over time it became a tradition. For the past 6 years, I was the one handling everything. Dates, bookings, menus, grocery lists, even printing out activity schedules. If I didn't do it, it didn't get done. This year, I said nothing. March came and went. No messages from me about the lake house. I waited to see if they'd even notice. 2 weeks before the usual weekend, Leona finally dropped a message in the group chat asking if I was still in for the trip. I replied, "Only if my schedule allows. Don't plan around me." They didn't reply for a full day. After that, the group chat started to fill with question marks. Who was bringing what? Who had the booking info? What time should everyone arrive? Normally, I'd step in and create a spreadsheet. This time, I let the silence do the work. Leona ended up handling the booking. Tessa kept asking about meals. My mom asked if I could just check over the list to make sure nothing was forgotten. I told her I had something else that weekend. I booked a vineyard stay with 2 coworkers instead. Quiet little cottage, walking distance from the winery, full breakfast included. I didn't hide it. I posted one picture of the sunset view on my story and left it there. Leona sent a message the next day. "This feels like sabotage." I responded, "Only if you expected me to handle everything for you again." This time, my parents didn't call. No guilt trip. No attempt to rope me back in. Either they finally understood or they were tired of being the middle. After the trip, I heard bits and pieces through a cousin. The food situation had been messy. The bedrooms weren't sorted. The boat rental got mixed up. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded and changed the topic. A few days later, I opened my door to find a laundry bag on my front porch. It was Tessa's, one of those oversized mesh bags with her initials stitched in. No note, no heads up. I left it exactly where it was. It stayed there for 2 days. Then it disappeared. No follow-up message. She got the hint. The next week, Leona asked to meet for dinner. She picked a casual Italian spot halfway between us. I agreed. Public place, neutral territory. We got a table outside, ordered drinks, and made it through 5 minutes of small talk before she got to the point. She said things felt tense. Said she didn't understand why everything felt so different lately. She didn't mention the spa weekend, or the birthday dinner, or the lake house. I let her talk. When she paused, I told her the tension wasn't new. It had always been there. I just stopped covering it up. She stared at her drink, tapped the glass, and changed the subject. I didn't press. By the end of the night, it was clear she missed the old version of me. The one who made things run without asking for credit. The one who said yes before anyone finished their sentence. The one who turned chaos into comfort, for everyone but herself. That version was gone. And this time, nobody could pretend they didn't notice. For our mom's birthday this year, I made a reservation at a quiet steakhouse she'd mentioned months ago. Just her, my dad, and me. No group chat, no shared Google Calendar, no mass coordination. I called them directly, picked them up, and we had dinner without any mention of Leona or Tessa. Mom looked surprised at first, but by dessert she was laughing, relaxed, leaning back in her seat without checking her phone every few minutes. By the time I got home, I had a voicemail from Leona. It started off calm but turned bitter fast. She said I was trying to divide the family and make mom choose sides. I deleted it halfway through. I hadn't stopped anyone from doing anything. I just didn't wait around this year for someone else to make a plan. No warnings, no explanations. I just did it. A few days later, a cousin texted asking if everything was all right between me and my sisters. Apparently, Tessa had been calling me spiteful at a family get-together. Said I was freezing them out. I didn't correct it. Let the story spread. People will believe what makes the most noise. I had bigger things going on. The week after mom's dinner, I closed on a small house about 30 minutes outside the city. 2 bedrooms, brick fireplace, trees lining the back deck, and not a single thing about it shared with anyone in my family beforehand. I moved in quietly, changed my address with the post office, set up my new mailbox with my name only, updated my family records online. A week after that, Tessa showed up. No call, no warning. Just her car parked in the driveway and her knock at the door around noon on a Saturday. I saw her through the side window. She stood there with sunglasses on her head and a brown paper bag in her hand. I didn't open the door. She waited for 5 minutes, knocked again, checked her phone, and finally walked back to her car. I sent her a message that evening, "Please don't drop by without asking." "That's not okay." No reply. None needed. That next weekend, I threw a small housewarming. Nothing big, just 6 friends from work, some snacks, soft music, and a bottle of Prosecco. We sat on fold-up chairs around the fireplace with paper plates and cheap wine glasses, talking about TV shows and bad dates. It felt like breathing after being underwater too long. A week after the party, I got an email from Leona. Long paragraph full of questions. Why had I pulled away? Why didn't I include them? Why was I cutting them out? I replied with one sentence, I'm not cutting you out, I'm cutting the strings you used to pull me with. She didn't write back. My dad called the next day. He didn't sound angry, just confused. He asked if something had happened, if this was about Thanksgiving or the lake house or something else. I told him the truth. My life isn't a rebellion. It's just mine now. That was the first time he didn't follow up with another question. For a long time, I thought being helpful made me loved. That being the one who stepped up meant I had value. But all it really did was make me invisible, unless someone needed something. I stopped chasing unity that required me to disappear inside it. I started waking up and realizing I didn't have to answer to anyone. I didn't have to prep, plan, apologize, or stretch myself to meet needs that weren't mine. I wasn't the backup anymore. I wasn't the fixer. I wasn't their person. I was just Fallon, and that was enough. 6 months passed without any big blow-ups. No dramatic scenes. Just small choices, one after another, that kept the peace on my side. I stayed busy with work, caught up with friends more, and let my life settle into something steady. Not perfect, but mine. In late October, my parents sent out an invite for a family harvest dinner at their place. I replied yes and added one thing. I'll be bringing someone. That was it. A day later, my dad called. Not to ask about my guest, but to say Tessa had asked him whether I was really bringing a plus one. He told her to ask me herself. She didn't. The night of the dinner, I pulled into the driveway with Evan beside me. We'd been seeing each other for a few months, low-key easy. He carried the bottle of wine, while I brought a homemade pie I'd already promised my mom. Nothing more. When Leona opened the door and saw us together, her blink lasted a second too long. Tessa, standing behind her, gave me a quick glance, then looked away without a word. Inside, the mood was quiet. Dinner smelled good, table was set, but something felt off. Tessa laughed louder than the jokes called for. Leona filled every pause with some new detail about her latest project. Evan sat beside me, calm, observant, hand resting lightly on mine, whenever the conversation shifted too hard in my direction. Midway through dinner, Leona brought up how I used to be the one making sure every gathering ran smoothly. I smiled and said I'd definitely been doing too much back then. No one responded. After the meal, as plates were being cleared, my mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. She looked at me for a second, then said, "You seem lighter." I told her I'd stopped trying to be everything at once. She nodded once, didn't press, and went back to drying silverware. Later, on the back porch, Tessa walked out while I was sipping cider. She leaned in just enough to keep the moment tense and muttered, "Don't act like you're better than us, just because you're distant now." I didn't argue. I told her, I'm not distant. I'm just no longer available for roles I didn't audition for. We left before dessert, thanked my parents, waved to the others, and drove off without being asked to clean or coordinate anything. No group text followed. No guilt trip sent later. The next morning, a flower delivery showed up, sunflowers and red maple leaves in a glass vase. No card. But I didn't need one. I knew who it came from. There wasn't some huge shift, no grand apology, but the silence had changed shape. They could choose how to react. I wasn't stepping back into anything to make it easier. I never asked to be celebrated. I just stopped being available for free. And this time when they stumbled, it wasn't over me, it was over the space I left behind.